Hey everybody, MBG here today with one of my first tutorial videos. Today I'm going to show you how I assembled a Stormtalon Gunship and give you some tips on how you can do the same. Here you can see the little baggies I have ready to go. I trimmed up all the flash and everything because I'm sure you don't want to see all that, right? Some of the tools I used was painter's tape, liquid cement, which is basically plastic glue from Model Masters, a plastic bristle brush, a seam scraper, an X-Acto knife, and of course the top to the glue, because don't forget that, right? One of my crucial elements of this project was rubber bands as well. So I definitely want to make sure you have some rubber bands when you're putting together, left and right part of models, because, well, they don't stick together very well sometimes. So busting out all the parts, grab your instruction manual and get to work on this project here. So basically all the parts are just kind of dumped out here. I inspect them, make sure everything kind of is there, start kind of formulating what's going on. This is going to be the fuselage. Then you've got the cockpit assembly, as well as the big assault cannon weapons kind of battery that goes underneath. I guess it's like chin mounted. Now the big thing is when you're getting ready for a project like this, just kind of laying everything out. I feel like then you just kind of take an inventory, dry fit things, start putting it all together. Right here you can kind of see I'm just using a small bead of glue. The plastic glue it's very it kind of spreads out. It's very thin and it spreads out. So you don't need to use a whole lot. It kind of get in there. Just kind of put a thin bead around wherever the model is going to interface. The two parts are going to interface together. You can kind of see here. Now it will kind of get everywhere if it squeezes out between the seams. But the cool thing is that you can just kind of take a wet paper towel. I use my spit. You can use water, and just kind of just soak up the excess glue there, and then hit it with the dry side, and it should be all gone. If it's already started to dry, then what you can do is just kind of wait for it to fully set and use a seam scraper to just kind of get it up, because it's gonna dry very, very strongly, and you can seam scrape it up. Now, something I learned recently. Now you can see me here dry fitting the parts together, because that's a crucial fit to do. Because the problem is with all this computer aided design, what's going to happen is a lot of times parts, if you have one little stub just kind of randomly somewhere that you didn't shave down, your stuff's not going to go together, and you're going to get glue on everything, and then you're going to kind of put it together, and you're like, ugh, so bad, like it just kind of gets everywhere. So always make sure that you dry fit as much as possible. If you're familiar with the kit, you can kind of just do as you want there, but I think for the most part, the thing to do is dry fit your parts. Coming up next, it looks like the weapon assembly, as well as the cockpit interface into the actual fuselage itself there. Like I said, you can kind of see here where it's just, a thin bead of glue is all you need with the plastic glue. You just kind of set it together. What I like about it is it adheres the parts together. So a lot of those gaps that you're going to normally get using normal conventional glue, you're not going to get with the plastic glue. Now, if you do have a pretty bad gap, because some of these kits, you get some bad casts and things like that. There's a pretty cool product out there called Plastic Putty from Vallejo, which is really nice. David Boucher and Kenny both turned me on to it. It comes in either like a little kind of toothpaste tube, or you can get it in a normal bottle, dropper bottle from Vallejo. And what's really nice is you just drop it in whatever gap you need to fill, and it's gonna dry, and it's not gonna shrink too much, like kind of like the liquid green stuff. It's gonna dry. It's gonna kind of solidify. It gets rock hard. You can shave it down. You can sand it with like some 10 grit sandpaper. Just wrapping it around like a pencil, or wrapping around the eraser part. Now right here, dry fitting parts like this is very crucial, because that's a big assembly. You kind of don't want to get it wrong. Make sure it all goes together there, and it looks like it was a solid fit. So I'm just gonna kind of hit it with some glue. And like I said, the glue will kind of seep out sometimes from the seams, and kind of get places that you might not want it, so to speak. So always have your paper towel handy, wet paper towel. Sometimes it's going to get places that you just can't fix, and that you're just going to have to wait for it to dry, hit it with a seam scraper, just kind of plane it and lock it down. You can use files as well, but remember with files, the key point to remember with that is that you always file in the same direction. Files are not made to go, back and forth like a toothbrush. Files are made to go in a single direction on a single plane. So you always want to make sure you're doing that, because you'll actually serrate the part that if you go back and forth like that. So you want to be very careful. So here you kind of see I got a little bit of glue out onto the visible area, and that's that's just bound to happen. That's part of assembly. So I'm probably just gonna wait for that to dry and then hit it up with the seam scraper, but make sure everything's locked in and solid before that. Now you can see here that this is the G-Dub, the new Citadel seam scraper. It's a very good tool. It hasn't gone dull on me yet. I've been using it for, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months already. And like I said, it's a solid tool. It hasn't, as long as you take care of your parts, they're not gonna disrespect you. I mean, your tools rather. So that's a big key in my opinion. I don't like loaning out my tools because I get them back in questionable conditions. So try to keep all my stuff together and in good condition, so that way I know when I need something, it's there. Like I said, not going to do the interior of the cockpit because we're going to be airbrushing that, so you don't really need to show that off. I'm going to not glue down the cockpit just to make it easier to airbrush that blue sky effect on it. The rubber bands definitely come in handy when you're doing 2-part assemblies. You just want to kind of lock it in, give it a chance to dry, soak up all that plastic glue into the seams, so you're not going to get those big gaps that you always seem to get with some kits, and if you use the normal conventional glue, in my opinion. So then just working on the weapon assembly here. It's pretty self-explanatory. Locks right in. Next up looks to be the VTOL engines. VTOL stands for vertical takeoff and or landing, I suppose. In this case, it's a pretty neat little assembly. These are just kind of 2-part clamshell parts that go together. There's a little engine that kind of locks in the middle that you build off the back, and then you just put a little winglet on the left and right fairing. Now, the crucial thing I feel like with this, you can kind of use a lot of the plastic glue on the interior, but the problem is that when you get to that winglet, you just want to use a very small part so that you're not getting glue everywhere because you're going to see it in like 4 different dimensions, top, bottom, left, and right. So you want to use a very little of that glue, because a little plastic glue does actually go a long way. So that was a critical part here. Now the 2 engines are going to lock on to that axle that you kind of see in the middle there. And then so when you flip it up, both the engines go up, or both the engines go down, which is really neat, kind of ideal on Games Workshop's part, because that definitely is pretty cool. Doing a little dry fitting there. You always want to make sure that you dry fit your parts. In this case, it's not too critical because you don't have an overbearing assembly. But when you saw the stuff there with the cockpit, that was getting a little monotonous. And even with a simple assembly, I still managed to get a little glue places. So you always want to be careful when you're dealing with big assemblies like this and things. So the engine, exhaust on the front go on pretty easy. The engine or the intake on the front, the exhaust on the back, very easy kit. There's that small bead of glue for the little winglet. Make sure you do that very easily, because you don't want to kind of get that everywhere. The rocket pod, I assembled this with the Skyhammer rocket pod. It was very simple kind of assembly, just a kind of a 2-part cap on the front for the missiles, a little exhaust cap on the back, and then it just kind of locks in on each side of the Stormtalon. I used a very little bit of plastic glue just in case want to pop those off and change them at a later date. However, I think this is probably the optimum build for the Stormtalon, so the customer just kind of requested that, so we just went with that. No fuss, no muss, but if we got to change it up, he can always change it up at a later date. I get the parts back to him so he can do his thing there. You can kind of see just doing a little bit of quick shaving. Now, that bristle brush there, that's a very important thing to talk about. It's a plastic bristle brush. Bought it there was like an airbrush accessory kit. I think it was like $20 from TCP Global, perhaps. Something like that. I'm sure you can Google it in, and one of them, TCP, TGP, something. It's a nice little accessory. It's plastic, so it's not going to mar your surfaces, whereas if you use like a steel bristle brush, same can be said with the airbrush. You don't want to be using metal parts in there that kind of gets in and starts kind of opening up rust holes to mess up your airbrush. So you want to make sure you keep everything nice and tight. Use as much plastic parts as you can when you're messing around in the internals of your airbrush, because that one little scrape where you get something's not coated, or you scrape the coating off of something, and you're in for a world of trouble. So there, it's pretty much together. Once you get the little assemblies together, and you can just kind of lock it all in, pop the cockpit on. So that's pretty much it. I mean, it's a pretty easy kit. So if you liked what you saw here, we're going to be doing a few more tutorials on that. So definitely subscribe to this channel. Make sure you check out the blog, spikybitsblog.com, and listen to our podcast, forgenarrative.com.